On today's episode, we talk about a topic that's been looming over fishing tackle for the past few weeks that no one, especially the tackle brands themselves, really wants to talk about. But that's okay. That's what we're here for. We are going to do our best to arm you, the consumer, with actual, factual information about the current foreign trade and tariff situation to help you better understand if and when you should buy your tackle and the imminent changes that are coming to price tags on a shelf near you. So buckle up. This one is quite a doozy. All that and more in this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a very unique and hopefully eye-opening and informative episode of Tackle Talk today. But before we get to today's episode, we are brought to you by the folks over at American Legacy Fishing. And today, we are unfortunately going to talk about some things that may likely hurt your wallets here coming up soon that none of us have any control over. But one thing that you can do to help your wallet is to take part in ALF's annual spring trade-a-thon going on right now. Now, you guys know American Legacy Fishing has the nation's easiest and best trade-in program where you can turn your old gear into new gear, but right now during their spring trade-a-thon, you get an extra 10 to 15% boost on your trade-in value. So an even better deal than normal. What are you waiting for? Turn that old pile of rods or reels that you're not using into extra cash with the easiest trade-in program on the internet. It's quick, it's simple, you get instant credit, and right now, an extra 10 to 15% trade boost. Fishing season is here. There's no better time to upgrade your gear, especially when you listen to today's episode and hear about what's about to happen to the price of almost every single piece of gear that you buy. There is no better time than now. So go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. Click trade-in program at the top of the page. And as always, when you do go to buy new gear, be sure to use code TACKLETALK5 for an extra 5% off all regularly priced and sale items. Save money by trading in, save even more money by getting a 10 to 15% boost right now, and save 5% on the back end with our code. No one does it better than the folks over at American Legacy. Again, www.americanlegacyfishing.com and use code TACKLETALK5. Okay, everybody, before we get into today's episode and conversation here, we have a few things that we need to talk about to kind of set the stage here. So this whole episode started probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that, when, as I'm sure you all have seen by now, there was a major announcement that new tariffs would be implemented on quite a few countries around the world that the United States trades with. So first off, I know we have a lot of younger listeners here, so for you all, a tariff is defined as a tax or duty to be paid on a particular class of imports or exports. So in this case, for like a very simple example, let's say that your fishing reel that you're using out there on the water today was made in China. Well, with no taxes or no tariffs, maybe it costs that Chinese factory $20 to produce that reel. So they have to make money on that reel also, so they mark it up to $40, so they make $20 per reel, and they sell it to Bass Pro Shops for $40 to sell in their stores. Bass Pro Shops then also has to make money, so they mark it up to $69.99 to sell. That gives the factory some profit margin, which every business has to have a profit margin, obviously. That gives Bass Pro Shops a profit margin, and then you get your reel for $69.99. So in that situation, that gives Bass Pro Shops a profit margin of $29.99. Well, what has happened as of late is the announcement of tariffs issued by the United States on products that we are importing from certain countries. And those can be anywhere from like 10% all the way up to like 145% or higher for like China, for instance. So let's say that they implement a 50% tariff on Chinese goods. Well, that means that that reel that that company used to be able to sell to Bass Pro Shops for $40 now cost $80 for Bass Pro Shops to import. And before, Bass Pro Shops made a profit margin of $29.99 per reel. So to keep that same profit margin and operate their stores effectively, now Bass Pro Shops has to mark that reel up from $69 $9.99 to $109.99, resulting in a $40 price increase for you as someone who just wants to buy that reel. So that's the thing in very simple terms. I am not an economist. I'm sure there's a lot more nuance that I left out of that example, but that's the gist of what we're talking about here. Now, this brings us to our first point of this episode here before we get into the conversation. This episode is in no way, shape, or form political. And I know the word tariff has taken on a very politically charged connotation the past few months, but we are absolutely not going to make this conversation even remotely political. Right, left, center, I don't care. Leave it at the door. I'm not dealing with that, and that is not the point of this episode. I sincerely ask that you respect this episode for what it is, a completely apolitical look at changes that could be coming to us as consumers of fishing products. Leave the political BS at home, please. Okay, so anyway, at the time when the tariffs were announced and, changes kind of first were put in the news and stuff, I, like a lot of people, I think, just saw the headlines, shrugged, and just kind of went along with my day. But as days turned into weeks and more news started coming out about when these tariffs would take place, the amount of each of the tariffs, and then in turn, the ramifications on the exact thing that we talk about each and every week on this show, fishing gear, I started to pay attention. So then fast forward like a week or two, and murmurs start happening in the industry about how companies are going to respond to this, and this is where I picked up my phone and I got a hold of one person that I sincerely trust to shoot me straight 100% of the time about what's going on, and that's Brian DOLNE, the Vice President of American Legacy Fishing. And I asked Brian for two reasons. One, again, because I trust Brian. Brian is an honest, down-to-earth guy that will not lie to me. He doesn't sugarcoat things, and he isn't afraid to say some things that other people in his position, I think, sometimes would tend to shy away from. But he does it in a very practical, respectful way, and I really appreciate that about him. And number two, because Brian has a very unique and valuable viewpoint on what's going on from both sides. He hears and sees everything as a consumer like us, but he also sees and hears everything from inside the fishing industry as he's constantly corresponding with reps and heads of a ton of major tackle companies and rod brands and reel brands and manufacturers. So Brian, unlike myself, has a way better understanding of the full picture of what's really going on behind the scenes, whereas I unfortunately just get a lot of hearsay sometimes. So I asked Brian, hey, I know this is a little bit of a rocky subject, but I think the listeners of Tackle Talk and the fishing consumer as a whole has a right to know what's going on, especially if we can see the writing on the wall and this information could help someone out there make smart decisions about tackle purchases and what to do in the near future to help them save some money or save them some heartache at the very least. And Brian obviously agreed, so we spent the next 2 weeks reaching out to our various contacts in the industry, most of which under the condition of anonymity, meaning that we would not reveal their names, their companies, as we begin to kind of compile information about what's going on and mainly if and when price increases are coming. So that's the big thing I wanted to help you with today. And I feel like right now we're kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, standing on the porch and there's a tornado coming right at us. You can hear the sirens, you can feel that wind starting to pick up, you can hear the howl. It's just not quite here yet, but again, it's heading right for your front porch. So that's how I feel right now in regards to price increases on almost everything in the fishing industry. And today I wanted this episode to be your warning and to arm you with facts and insider information that I have not heard a single other show or podcast provide anyone to help you plan accordingly here. Again, this is a subject that is something that especially the brands and everybody don't want really out there so much because it is a big sting to the consumer, but I feel like you guys have the right to know what's coming down the pike. Now, can we make the tornado go away? No, but can we at least tell you, when it's going to hit your house or how bad it's going to be? I think we do a pretty good job of that in today's episode, and I feel like today we're just trying to give you enough time to get to the basement and reduce the effects of what's coming right at us. So it kind of blows my mind how few people are talking about this right now. Everyone would much rather worry or complain about, cheating or who's getting DQ'd or forward-facing sonar or whatever this or that. Meanwhile, we could very well be staring the biggest shakeup in the tackle industry since COVID and maybe even before that right in the face. And again, you guys know here on Tackle Talk, we talk about tackle, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I feel like it's our duty to provide actual, factual, inside information to you as a consumer, and I hope that this will be helpful. So with that, let's jump right into our conversation with Brian DOLNE. All right, folks, sitting across the screen from me today, I have a gentleman that many of you know by now. He is the Vice President of American Legacy Fishing, but tonight he is going to be our sort of industry expert and insider here to help us make sense of everything that's going on in the tackle world right now in the near future. It is Brian DOLNE. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem, Andrew. I appreciate you asking me to do this, and I think like everybody, I'm a little, in the industry at least, I'm a little intrigued to see what happens over the next few weeks, months, years. Interesting topic for sure.
Okay, deep breaths here. We're about to go down probably a fairly bumpy road here, but are you ready for this? Like, there is still time to back out if you want to.
There's no backing out. We're going full steam ahead, but I'm going to say we're just relaying information we have gathered, and that is all. No politics anywhere near any of my commentary. It is all relaying stuff that I have heard from actual people in the industry.
Well, we are going to dive right in here then, folks. So by now in the episode, obviously you have listened to the intro of this and the explanation of what we are talking about and why we are talking about it. It's obviously the looming tariff situation and economic situation and the effect that that could very well have on us as tackle consumers in the very near future. So we have both, in full transparency, me and Brian, we've reached out to various people and various folks at different companies in the industry that we know over the past probably 2 weeks or so, all anonymously. That's another thing we want to kind of start off by saying here. We're not going to name any companies. We're not going to, blow anybody's cover or anything. But, obviously we talked to people we trusted from a lot of different corners of the industry that agreed to speak with us as we compiled as much real information as we could to kind of sort of consolidate everything into one conversation. So Brian, rather than kind of try to start in one particular spot here, I know you've been talking to a lot of contacts over the past week or two. You obviously run a large tackle store and a tackle shop and an online retailer. You deal with a ton of vendors and suppliers, and you really kind of have to have your finger on the pulse of these sort of things. So you've done some digging. I kind of want to give you the floor to start, and then we'll kind of expand on it as we go. But what is the overall lay of the land right now when it comes to these tariffs that have been input on, specific goods in the fishing industry and in general? And then why is that important to us as consumers in the fishing industry?
So, basically to everybody in the industry from a, manufacturer side, or in our case, like a vendor side, you are basically trying to juggle, okay, what is the effect of these price increases? What is the timing of them? And how do we best manage that in the sense of, does XYZ company, do they want to make sure that their margin is remain full as it is currently, or do they want to absorb some of the cost of those tariffs to keep their product at a relatively competitive price? Or are they in a position, and I don't believe there are many that are, but are there some that want to absorb the full cost of the tariff and have no price increase to make sure that they continue to have a viable product and just see what happens over time? So that's kind of where I feel like each vendor is having those internal discussions, trying to navigate these waters the best they can and come up with the best decision that positions them as a brand in the best possible light. Now, I will say there is a best case scenario here that I think is at least worth mentioning and encouraging to everybody in the fishing industry, is that I know for a fact that ASA, the American Sport Fishing Association, who basically, advocates on behalf of all anglers in the entire fishing industry, they have a playbook in place of the way that they would approach Washington about making fishing goods exempt from any of these tariffs. Now, obviously, there is no way to have any idea whether that would be effective. My opinion is that would be a very difficult road to be successful on, but it is at least encouraging that they already have this playbook in hand. They are ready to, go to Washington and make that plea, assuming this does actually hit the way it is planning on hitting currently. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at. We're looking at price increases. There's no doubt. It's just a matter of how much and what percentage of those vendors are doing it. And ultimately, it's going to be more expensive products for the consumer, unfortunately. And an odder marketplace, if nothing else.
So I think when where you're getting tariff news, or at least, for me and everybody out there probably, is like whatever news source that you consume. And obviously, again, we've said this now, obviously, if you listen to the intro 1,000 times, we are not talking about the politics of this sort of thing. But, the information you get on the tariffs obviously depends on where you get your news. There's different news stations that are going to have different feelings about it one way or the other. But I think a lot of times in news, it's their job to kind of almost not exaggerate, but, sort of be a little bit more sensational and, obviously kind of draw up clicks and eyeballs and stuff. You've talked to a lot of people over the past couple weeks. How concerning should this be? Like, there's a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, it'll blow over, it's fine, we probably don't need to worry about it. And there are other people that are like, dude, my business could go under in 2 days. How concerned, and what's like the panic level as far as a fishing consumer is right now, do you think?
So as a consumer, I'd say the panic level would be high. And obviously there's different angles. Like for a smaller business that's, in the tackle industry, my concern would be very, very high. And then if you're a bigger company that can absorb a kind of a wait and see approach and just wait to feel things out, then maybe they're, at maybe just a medium level of concern. But for the consumer, after talking to probably 30 to 40 industry contacts over the past 2 weeks, I am extremely confident in saying right now that the plan, which subject to change, but the plan is to be passing along some pretty substantial price increases. In some cases, confirmed their plan is 40 to 50%. And I've heard rumors that are not substantiated, but rumors that a couple of major brands are contemplating 75% price increases on select products. Now, I would say it seems like the general consensus for now is somewhere in the 7 to 20% range, but there are plenty in that 20 to 40 bucket, and that's a lot of money for the average consumer. That is, you're talking a major bump, and it's going to hit the pocketbook pretty hard if this all holds true. But a lot of these, I know that Dobbins, for example, has already taken a price increase. Those are reflected on their website, so obviously I'm comfortable saying that. But and there's several others that we've received emails and new pricing agreements and everything of that nature. That this is happening at this point. It's just a matter of whether it stays or whether it doesn't stay.
So that's another good point, obviously, to talk about is the timing of this. So when a brand is sending you a letter, and I've seen some of these letters too, obviously we're not mentioning names, but I've seen a couple of the letters that I think probably got sent around that, I probably wasn't supposed to see. But you're right, I was seeing 25 to 40 to 45% price increases from the brand to the dealers. And obviously, I'm assuming as a dealer, right, if you're getting a 20, let's call it a 30% price increase from company X for the products that you're buying, as a retailer, are they eating any of the costs of that? Or is it like, no, I've got to keep my margins. Like, my margins are my margins. I need to pass that completely along to consumer. And that's what most retailers do. I have no idea how that back end of stuff works.
So most vendors will have a minimum advertised price MAP policy or an MSRP policy, which most people are familiar with, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. The goal through all of this, it seems like in most vendors, is to be able to keep the dealer margins whole. So, and that is, obviously, I come from a very biased position in this particular arrangement, but the dealers really do not have anywhere near the margin to work with that I think most people do. And so if dealers were to have to take reduced margins because of this, I think you would see the industry compress quite a bit, because there's not the margin to be had there, especially with shipping costs and all the overhead going up that everyone in the world's been dealing with. But so that is what most, not all, but most vendors are trying to maintain the same margins that the retailer had previously. And if not that, they're trying to at least maintain, the same level of profit, even though it's obviously higher price point would be lower margin if the profit's the same. But that's what the retailers are seeing, at least.
So my simpleton brain looks at some of these letters that I've seen, and I know you've got some of them, obviously, of these price increases. How are those price increases not the tariff rate. Like, for instance, I think a lot of them have like a blanket 10% tariff, and then China's got, I don't know what it is, 150 or 250% tariff or something ridiculous on China. Then, company X comes at you and says, hey, we have a 30% price increase. How does that make sense? Like because I've seen wording that says, hey, we're doing a 25 to 40% price increase on any product not made in the USA. Does that mean that that company is blending the effects of the tariffs from different countries into one price increase? Like they're underpricing what they probably should the Chinese goods because, no one's going to pay 250%, and they're overpricing some of the other things that come from Japan or Vietnam or Taiwan or whatever that are only at a 10% tariff, and they're blending that into like a 25 to 40%.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that, I do not envy the people making these decisions right now, because I'm sure those are some tough waters to navigate. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of stress, I'm sure. I mean, this is the viability of their business is kind of contingent upon the decisions they make right now. So I know of one major conglomerate that about 50% of their products are made in the U.S. And so what they are doing is that they are taking, like you said, kind of one of these uniform price increases across the board. And it's not the same on every single thing, but it's basically within the same range. And so what they're basically doing is saying, we are going to make virtually no margin on the products coming from overseas, China specifically. And then we're going to make much more margin on the products made in the US. And the reason that they would do something like that, which makes total sense, if you had Andrews Baits and you had a bag of plastics that was made in China and a spinnerbait that was made in the US, and you were going to have to raise your price to $11 a bag on a bag of plastics, you're probably not going to sell any of those. But if you could spread that out, you could bump the spinnerbait a couple bucks, bump the bag of plastics a couple bucks, you might still be able to get enough. There might be enough play from the consumer side that you could make both of them work instead of just being totally priced out of one of those products.
Are you seeing or dealing with any companies that are majority or almost all U.S. made that are still seeing price increases, not necessarily because their product is tariffed from coming overseas, but because their supplies are being tariffed?
So that seems to be the big question mark right now, and that's when I haven't gotten those companies, to my knowledge, at least the ones I've spoken with, have not made a final decision on what they're going to do. And that's one of those where if it were me and I don't know their margin structure, so I can't definitively say this, but what makes logical sense to me is I would take this as an opportunity to say, yes, we may make a little bit less margin because we're going to get tariffed on the guides that we bring in or whatever piece you want to use, depending on what product it is. But we're not going to take a price increase. And I would just use it as an opportunity to really grow my business and grow my brand. But obviously, we don't know if that's going to happen. We don't know exactly what I legitimately don't know what a set of guides costs for G. Loomis or any of these brands. Like I have no idea. So it's hard to know whether they can actually, do that. But I would hope and I would think that the price increases for U.S. made products, even if they have components that come from overseas, you are going to see smaller price increases there.
Yeah, I've talked to at least two I can think of that are in that camp where, they're made in the USA. They start from just basically complete components and make their entire product in, garages and workshops and whatever right here in the US. And those seem to be the ones that are a little bit more on the wait and see side. And there's one big brand that, if I said the name, every single person that's listening to the show would know. And that's what he told me. He said, we are comfortably in the wait and see category right now. Like, we're not making any rash decisions. Yes, there's, whispers and murmurs that the supplies that we're using are going to be going up. They seem to be more worried about just physically getting the supplies than the actual pricing of them. Like, I heard a couple of them that said basically, hey, we kind of saw this coming. We put a giant order in for all of these supplies, and now the problem is they got them bought before tariffs kicked in, so they're going to be good for a while and not see any price increase, but they are sitting in some shipping container on a boat, out in the bay, and they can't get the gear to them, or they're sitting still in, China or whatever, but they've said, hey, the tariff is not going to hit these, but I just don't know when they're going to get to you. Like, it seems to be there's going to be some companies that are almost going to have like COVID 2.0 problem, which is not necessarily the pricing so much as it is just physically getting it in their hand.
Yeah, that's all of this is very interesting, and there are so many layers to all of it that it's really hard to know exactly the direction this is going to go, and that's because obviously nobody knows across the entire world really. So it's hard for us to sit here and say, but I do know that there was an example. One of the contacts at one of the major players in the industry told me that I guess China has already had two different 10% tariffs hit. So they basically ordered reels, whatever was on the container with it, but ordered product. It comes over. They had agreed to pay $100 a reel, whatever it was. And the reels show up. In the meantime, I think it was February 3rd, early February, 10% tariff hits. So they had agreed upon a price of $100. The tariff gets slapped on top of that, so it's now 110. Then they have another container of product coming through, and again, early March, the same thing happens, a 10% additional tariff. So in that particular instance, you already are at 110. Now you slap another 10% on top of that, you're at 121. So in the matter of 30 days, their actual tangible cost of that hypothetical reel, in this example, increased $21. In addition to that, this particular outfit has a 60-day dealer agreement that states that they cannot change prices without giving the retailer 60 days notice. So they had no choice but to eat that additional cost before they were even, per their own agreement, authorized to have a price increase. So it's just, this is, at some point, obviously, you can't just eat that kind of margin. Guys, fishing stuff does not have the margin that some of these other industries do. It is not the most profitable industry in the world. So you can't just take that and say, oh, is what it is, cost of doing business, move on with life. That's getting passed down. And as long as that happens, it's going to be a more expensive hobby.
So I think China's the one, obviously, that scares a lot of people. So you mentioned 10, whatever right there, but that's the one we see in the news now where it's like, oh, it's somewhere. I mean, I look at different sites and you see different things from 150 to 250% on things from China. Like, is that real? Is that hitting for these people already? I don't think people realize how much stuff we use in fishing is actually made in China. I mean, the one that scares me a lot is tungsten. Like, tungsten is all made in the same dang factory over there, coming in different, colored boxes for different brands. Like, it's all coming from the same place. Have those giant tariffs hit yet that almost make it like, if something like that hits, that almost makes everything from China in our industry come to a standstill, right?
I mean, I would almost certainly think so. And I mean, tungsten's no big deal because it's so cheap anyway. As of now, it doesn't even matter, right?
Yeah,
maybe not. Anyway, so to answer your question, my understanding of it in part one, I honestly don't know if these officially hit. I believe there was an April 10th deadline, but I'm not certain of where that went as far as when they actually, the buck stops here, you are paying this. So I believe. And again, this is another thing that's so frustrating about this. It's really hard to get the exact correct information. Like, it seems like it would be very straightforward, but it's not. So I'm going to say this, and I'm very confident this is right, but give me a little bit of wiggle room in case it's not. I believe the tariff is around 140%. That's what gets reported, but that is a little bit deceiving because the way I understand it, there was already a 40% tariff in place. So they report the total number, but, and I'm using very aggressive air quotes here, but only 100% of that tariff
just
is
double the cost. No big deal. Yeah.
No big deal. And that is my understanding of how that is working. Now, I don't know when these manufacturers saw that. And they also, like you mentioned, if they saw it coming down the pipeline, they had an opportunity to maybe load up on product before that hit. I'm sure some people have done that. I'm sure others are going to say, okay, we have random numbers here, $3 million in inventory. We added another $1 million container. We are going to blend the cost of those two for now. And so we're going to start off with X amount of price increase, and then we'll see what happens for the next container.
So I'm going to go down a road here. I hope this makes sense. There's a couple things that scare me about the lay of the land right now, I guess. One is the ability for us as consumers to get unnecessarily screwed on things. Like, there's going to be people, and I've talked to a couple of the companies that I talked to this week that said they know for sure there are people they have seen doing this already, where people are raising their prices on gear that they did not pay a tariff on because it is now acceptable and the norm, and they can kind of hide behind it and they can make more money. Now, there's two schools of thought there. One could be, yes, they're being sleazy and they're just raising the price because everybody else is and they're just making more profit. The other could be what you just said, which is, yeah, maybe they didn't pay that tariff on the first 3 containers, but they paid it on the 4th one and they do need to blend that. So there's a weird environment out here right now where there's some things that could happen behind the scenes that make me a little nervous as a consumer, just not knowing if I'm really paying because of, hardships that these companies are going through versus someone kind of striking at an opportunity to make an extra buck.
I hope. I mean, I really hope that that's not what's going to happen from this. I would say this. I feel reasonably confident that your XYZ small business owner that has grinded and put his family's future on the line to build up a small tackle company, those people are not going to do that. It is my opinion. Those are not the ones you got to worry about. Those people aren't in here for the money. If they wanted to make a bunch of money, they would have gone to a different industry, a much different industry. They're in here because they love fishing. They love the fishing industry and they have a passion for what they're doing. It's the big conglomerates that scare me a little bit. It's those magic letters.
Because some of them are, in full transparency here, some of them were already very much in the red before this whole thing started.
Yep.
So do you think there are some people at some certain companies out there that might take this as a way to generate some extra revenue, even more so than should realistically be passed on to us?
People that are in business to sell businesses, the easiest way to create a situation where you have an active buyer is to make top line revenue grow. So if you can find a way to do that, I do believe that if your intent is to sell, that is the path of least resistance. And so it would not surprise me, and I don't know this, but it would not surprise me if we saw some PE-owned firms take full advantage of this. And I hope that's not the case, and I certainly don't. There's zero shred of insider knowledge here. I just hope that we don't see that. And if we do, I think that would be the kiss of death for them, because anglers are way too savvy nowadays. Everybody is way too sharp. That's not going to fly. It's not going to work. And it would be a huge mistake. So I hope we don't see it. All of us, I feel like the industry as a whole is really, really small. So people are going to know. Word's going to get out. And I don't think that would be a good idea. And I hate the thought of people doing that to the angling community when we're already looking at seeing more expensive. I mean, Andrew, people are already talking about how fishing has gotten to be a rich man's game and it's way too expensive. And now we're talking about huge price increases. I don't want to see anybody exploit it and take advantage of the situation.
Is this a lane? Is there somebody out there that is going to come out on top on this for good reasons? Like, is there an opportunity to be had by companies out there to make something positive out of this? Or is this just an all around lose-lose for everybody?
I think there will be pockets of positivity in it. I think it would be, I think there'll be some really cool success stories. I think you're going to look at, stuff that's made in the U.S. Like Zoom, for example, is made in the U.S. And I mean, Zoom, you want to talk about a brand, obviously everybody still uses it, but like you want to talk about a brand that's fallen out of like the glitz and the glam. Like now everybody's into this JDM stuff. And I mean, Zoom's just been there doing their thing, just kicking out tons of plastic, cool colors, great styles, just right here in the U.S. Like I could see there being kind of a grassroots movement back to Zoom and it being, it kind of fits in with the whole, retro theme and everything. It all comes back around. I could see Zoom, getting back in the limelight and I could see there being, 5 or 6 other brands like that. And there's certainly going to be some, and I'm just naming rods off the top of my head that I know. G. Loomis, obviously made in the U.S. St. Croix, a large portion of high-end rods made in the U.S. ALX rods assembled in the U.S. Cash and rods assembled in the U.S. There could be some really, really cool stories that come out of this, but I do think you're going to hear. It's going to be rocky. So it's going to be hard to say who the winners are and who the losers are going to be. But I'm almost certain if there's going to be big winners in this, it will probably be those U.S. brands that are, have kind of been grinding away at it.
Who has been least affected by this? Like types of tackle or rods or reels or, like soft plastics are a really good example. I think soft plastics will be one of the least affected things by this because, a lot of that can be made here in the United States. The supplies are relatively inexpensive. I think your margins are probably a little bit better on soft plastics versus a lot of other hard goods kind of just in general. So like soft plastics might be one that's in the positive side of things. Are there certain pieces of gear that we should really have our eye on that say, there could be a giant, like an outsized example of a price increase for this particular type of thing versus others?
Hard to say. So this, and again, it's hard to track exactly what's what now, but that aluminum tariff, would, affect any reel with an aluminum frame. So obviously you don't have to put a tariff on the part that's aluminum, but that is stacked on top of whatever other tariffs there are. So, we could see reel prices go through the roof. You may see, some U.S. reel company come to light and be able to, pull that one off pretty well. I will say it is interesting because Humminbird and Garmin are two that have said they're not taking price increases. And I didn't know this. And if someone that works at Johnson Outdoors didn't tell me this directly, I didn't know that Humminbird graphs are made in the U.S. The only thing, even the screws are made in the U.S. And the only thing that's not are the glass screens. And so it's just one of those things. You sell this stuff for 10 years and it's like, how did I not know that? Like
I've seen videos of their facilities and plants and stuff. It's awesome. Yeah. It's all here in the United States.
But so that's one that with everything getting more and more expensive, or theoretically getting more and more expensive, that will be kind of cool that you're going to see the premium electronics that everybody has complained about being too expensive stay the same price. That's just it's a funny kind of juxtaposition as everything else goes up, and then they're the ones that are just like, it's like
high-end electronics, G. Loomis's, and it's like all the stuff we complained about being too expensive. It's like, it's not too bad now.
Yeah, so that I could see those type of products kind of by comparison seeming like they are a better value than what they are now.
So the information that you're getting as an actual tackle retailer, like you are getting the correspondence from these companies, what percentage of the companies that you carry at American Legacy have you heard from so far that changes will be coming?
Pretty much all of them. There are a few that are taking the wait and see approach, and they have basically used the verbiage that for now there are no price increases. But if we see a price increase, we will pass that along, or at least pass some percentage of that along. And so that has been communicated to us. And, there's one, if you want to get one now, you might as well grab it. But there's a very popular red scale that may or may not be the official scale of a professional bass tour that is going to go up in price substantially very soon. So I'd think about buying you one of them, Bubba. I would think about buying you one.
So that company then, I mean, have you dealt with them on anything? Like, is it across the board price increase, or is it something like that for a specific SKU or a specific item?
Totally depends on the brand. And a lot of what we've seen there were a few that were really, really quick. Boom, we're doing price increases, and that's that. And then there's others that have said, hey, here's the price increase effective this date. And it seems like a lot of those are taking effect in May. But it seems like everybody's kind of leaving themselves an out, the little bit of, hey, conditions may change, that this pricing is not set in stone. And so it's just such a fluid situation. But those, like I said, these price increases are happening, and they're going to happen relatively quickly. And some of them, like we mentioned, Dobbins, that's already happened. In all fairness, to balance out the GSM spectrum, they're like RoboWorm did not take a price increase, USA based. So I feel like that should be mentioned at least. So those consumers are going to notice this very soon. And then obviously there's when a vendor tells a retailer, here's the new MSRP policy, here are the new MSRPs of these products, then the next question becomes, how quickly does the retailer change their prices on those?
Exactly.
So it should be immediately. So by the letter of the law, per your dealer agreement, when they present you with a new pricing policy, you adhere to that policy immediately. But that's not, I don't think that's realistic, nor does the vendor, nor do they have those unrealistic expectations that, whether you're brick and mortar or an online retailer, that you're just going to drop everything, change their pricing and get it taken care of. So you may see this trickle down 30, 60, 90 days down the road, but you're going to start seeing these price increases popping up very soon. And like I said, some of them have already changed.
So the big question, obviously, we've been getting over the past couple weeks is like, should I stockpile now? Like, I see the train coming down the tracks right at me. Should I just load up? Should I not do that and not panic buy and just kind of buy like I normally do as I need things? Or should I wait and see and hold off, and maybe this whole thing is a big nothing and I don't need to, spend all of this money to start with? Obviously, it sounds like the last one is not the case from what we've heard from everybody we've talked to. It's like, these are coming. It's not I don't think anybody sees this being next week we get some sweeping announcement and guess what? All good. That's not happening anymore. Everything's normal. Whistle past the graveyard. Everything's fine. Like, I don't think that's happening. So would you recommend that people stockpile as much as they can now? Or do you think it's more of a don't need to panic quite that much?
Probably depends on your personality a little bit, but I'll tell you, I called my Shimano rep today and said, man, I need to buy some reels. Like that's kind of
there's your answer, folks. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. But I could also see, I'm not freaking out like consumables. Like I haven't bought any soft plastics. Well, I have, but that's just because I'm an addict. And
exactly. Not any more than normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Not any more than normal. I'm not stockpiling a bunch of stuff like that. And my nature is to believe that I don't typically subscribe to worst case scenario being the way that my brain works. So I just assume that it won't be as bad as what we're kind of even though some of these are firm price increases, I just assume that it'll be temporary or something. And God, I could just be totally wrong, but I'm not freaking out about taking action. But that being said, like that scale I mentioned earlier, you want to buy one of them? I'm not kidding. I'd buy one now because that one's definitely happening. And there's plenty of others that it's going to happen. So if you want to get out in front of it, and plus dude, it's fishing season. It's April, it's end of April. Like, pull the trigger, heck with it. But I certainly don't want that to be a sales pitch thing for people either. Like, obviously, I want you to buy as much stuff as you want. And you should buy it now, hoard it, and then buy more later whenever they have the price increases. But if you want to save some money, you will almost certainly, let's put it this way, you're not going to buy it cheaper than what it's priced at right now. And we all know how this works. The price will go up. If the tariffs get wiped away, even if it's in a year or 2 years, what were we talking about before we started recording? If it was $5 a bag beforehand, or $5 a crankbait, we'll say, beforehand, it goes to $7.50. If the tariff gets wiped away, it's not going back to $5. It might go back to $6, or it might stay at $7.50.
That's the thing that, if you put gun to my head, Andrew, what are you most scared of right now? It's not that, these sweeping price increases from all of these companies and stuff will stay. It's what does it go back to? And like you said, it does not go back to the price it is right now. If a regular chatterbait is $4.99 and then these increases come in and they're at $7.99, well, when everything's said and done, if everything's said and done, it's not going back to $4.99. It's going back to $5.99. The cat's already out of the bag. They've already got you to the sting of paying more. So any decrease that they have is going to look better by comparison. You're like, oh, cool, we're paying $3 less per chatterbait than we were a couple weeks ago. But if you rewind and you compare to where you were a year ago, it's going to be a steady price increase, a price increase that, by the way, we probably would have thrown a fit about if it would have just happened. Like, if you would have just taken chatterbaits from $4.99 to $5.99, we probably would have rioted. But since you now taken them up to $7 or $8 and then back down, oh, it's okay again. And that's going to be the new normal. And that's what I'm most scared of.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, this is an industry that doesn't traditionally take a lot of price increases. And most companies took 2 price increases coming out of COVID times. So now you're dealing with 3 major price increases in a 4-year window. That is not normal for the fishing industry. And so that's what, as someone who makes their living selling fishing equipment, that's what has me very nervous, is that the only way in my mind to ensure that consumers keep purchasing at that point is it has to be something new, because it would be really hard. And I'm going to pick on a Shimano product right now just because I'm very familiar with what their pricing structure was. You have a Zodius rod that has not changed. It was $169, $179. Now it's going to be potentially, and I don't know this, I'm projecting a price increase here, but if $269, $279, and it's the same rod. Like, that was the price, and I'm not referencing the price now. I'm saying that was the price coming out of COVID. They've had to have price increases, which are understandable, up to the $209, $219, $229 range. And now you're going to go another, stretch up the table. And that's consistent across all brands, not just Shimano. That's a lot for the same product. So now you've got to have a new product to get consumers to buy, and there's just not that many of them. They can't cram products out the door that fast with them still being quality. So that puts us as a retailer in a really, really weird spot that I don't know. How much are we getting? And then how much do I buy? Like, how much product do we carry in inventory? Are our sales going to drop? Okay, the price increase on average is 30%. Does that mean sales are going to drop 30%? Are they going to drop 80%? Are they going to be flat? I have no idea. And there's no way to gauge that. You just have to go by feel. So that's a really tough one.
That's an interesting thing I have not thought of one bit since we've kind of started thinking about this and reaching out to people, is the fact that this may indirectly drive innovation. Because as you try to get consumers to take the bite and the sting of a price increase, the easiest way to do that is with a new product, not a product they're used to seeing at an old price and then getting sticker shock. It's, oh no, we come out with a new rod in this line that they've never seen a price for at all. So they're not looking at a price increase. Now, yeah, maybe if we would have came out with this rod 3 years ago, it would have been $150 and now it's $180. They never saw that $150. It's just a brand new rod at $180 and they don't see a price increase. That's interesting because, as fishing, I think one of our big gripes a lot of times is there's a little bit of lack of innovation and companies get really comfortable and they just kind of do rinse and repeat or change colors or sizes or whatever, and that gets them by for another year. Maybe there's a small silver lining that to get people to spend the money that they want, they're going to have to spend and have to charge for these. They might have to come out with new products of something we've never seen a price of before.
Yeah, new products, and that gives them leverage too. If they don't own their own plant, if they're using an existing plant overseas, that gives them the leverage to say, hey, we want this new product made, but we don't have to use your plant. We need the best price. And that's where the consumer can kind of get a little bit of reprieve from those tariffs, is just through negotiating with those factories in China, which those factories in China, they're fully aware of, they are more aware than anyone of what's going on. And they also know that they're probably going to have to compress their margins a little bit to make this happen. So even though there's probably some give and take there, and that some of that is speculation and just common sense on my part, and some of it's that people have told me that's what's going on, is that there's some negotiating to help offset those. So instead of it being 100% tariff to the vendor themselves, maybe they get some of that taken care of in the form of a discount. And then obviously when you have a lower base to work off of as far as the cost, the 100% is even less effective because you're starting with a lower base. So
the one thing that I heard when I reached out to all these people, I was really interested that none of them took a different option other than a price increase. Because the other way you can do that is to try to save money elsewhere to avoid a price increase to your consumer. So, one of the things, unfortunately, that could be on chopping block would be staff or warranties or things like that. I mean, we just saw it, with some companies pretty recently of shutting down a certain facility and, now you don't have to pay all that overhead and those employees. Or do you take your warranty of this rod from 5 years to 3 years and then there's less coming back in that you have to replace and less, money that you're losing out on that? Have you heard of anybody trying to get creative with this? Because everybody I reached out to, it was basically either wait and see or blanket price increase of what we're paying on tariff, basically.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of anybody taking a creative approach like that at all. And maybe all those conversations are being had, behind closed doors. And, obviously the last thing you want to do is start talking about, people's jobs. And then, that gets reported before it's even happened, and all that could go south very quickly. But what I would say is I think those options make a lot of sense. Obviously I don't want people to lose their jobs, but there has to be something other than just, we're just going to jack the price way up. Because I don't think, and I could be wrong because people just, it surprises me all the time, but it just seems very unrealistic that 45% price increases are just going to be accepted.
The norm.
That all of a sudden, okay, yeah, people just pay that and it'll be okay. And I mean, I'm sure some people will because they have to. If you want it, you have no other choice. But
it's the fishing industry. We will spend all day looking for a coupon code that's 7% off instead of 5% off of the one we have. We are the biggest penny pinchers, around. So you're right. I don't see this going quietly. I mean, there will be a ton of pushback the second that people actually start seeing these prices reflected on websites. You're going to get just so much pushback from every corner of fishing that I would think, like I said, you would think that a lot more of these people would be getting creative and trying to find new things. And that's the one thing, like you said, unless they're just keeping it very close to the chest and wouldn't even tell us about it, I haven't heard a single company go down that route.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely have not heard a single peep about anything like that. I will say something that was really interesting that I'm going to get myself in trouble with this one, but any company that I looked at, and I'm strictly talking about your larger companies here, because the smaller, more custom guys in the industry, they don't have a choice. They have to do something. They don't have the bankroll of these larger companies. So please don't lump those in with this. But any of the larger companies that we deal with, that I'm like, they make great products, their business makes sense, and they are very professionally run, and everything is exactly the way I would want a business to run. They all had the same stance, and that was, we're just going to see what happens. We're going to wait. Every one of them that you're kind of like, man, I don't know what these guys are doing. They're running around like their hair's on fire all the time. They're doing this and then they're doing that, and it's just kind of a mess all the time. Their immediate response was price increase, price increase, price increase, effective immediately. We're gone. Boom. And it was just very interesting that it's like, okay, I think I see why some of these companies are successful and others maybe are kind of losing some market share, because it was very, very telling, and it was a great learning experience. I'm glad you asked me to do this, because it was so informative to force myself to reach out to these people and get their answers. And it was night and day difference. And like I said, even the ones that they said, yeah, we'll probably have to take a price increase, but we're going to wait. Even though the price increase is there, there's a calmness about it, and just knowing that, like, hey, we're not going to get spun out. We're going to wait. We're going to observe, analyze, and decide from there.
It's hilarious because I know some of the companies that you're talking about too. Big companies or conglomerates or whatever that are in the exact same situation and lane. Like, they have almost identical brands under them. They have, almost structured the same, except different leadership and different styles. And like you said, one could be running around like a chicken with their head cut off and saying the world's going to end tomorrow, and this could really, sink us. And the other one's like, call me in 2 weeks and we'll see if I'm worried at that point. I'm not worried right now. We're okay.
Yep. It's interesting. Extremely interesting.
So a couple big questions kind of to wrap us up here. Again, I appreciate you hopping on for this, because this is info that I could try my best. I can't get. You're obviously way more plugged in on this side of things and starting to see the back end of it. And kind of, I look at this episode as almost like the tornado warning before the tornado is actually coming and, going through your neighborhood. It's like, we still have a little bit of time here before the tsunami hits, right? Before you've got a warning right now. And so I think the really important thing is to try and give as many people that warning as they can, and let them do with the information what they will. Now, if you want to go out and you want to buy everything, you could be sitting real pretty in 3, 4, 5 months when everybody's paying twice as much for the gear that you just bought right now, if you have the means to do that. If you don't, at least you have the information to kind of make an informed decision. But I guess, like, big picture, what is American Legacy Fishing's plan moving forward? Because you're also in a situation where you've got a lot of these things that are going to start hitting your doorstep, and you've got some decisions to make and stuff too. Like, what's the plan of action on the actual retailer side as of today? We're recording this on April 17th.
I think I'll revert back to the comment I just made about anybody that I kind of look up to, and the way that they run their business is just trying to be more calm about it. So that's the way I'm trying to be. Now, that doesn't mean that my brain isn't scrambled eggs trying to figure out what's going on here and making the right decision. And obviously we've got employees' jobs at stake, my own job at stake. Like, these are big decisions, but we are fortunate in that the manufacturers are going to tell us what they're going to tell us what the price is, and we're going to change the price, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, the only thing in the short term that I think you'll see, like, you're not going to see a lot of sales and a lot of deals and all that kind of stuff from us, because that is too much risk, if you will, to give away your existing inventory that we'll never be able to buy at that price again. So why go down that path? So that's obviously a bummer. We love to run great sales, and anytime we can run a sale that benefits the consumer, we absolutely will. But unfortunately, right now is probably not that time. We need to just sit down and understand that this is a lot of unknown, and we are going to try to manage just having the correct amount of inventory in stock. And I know currently we don't have enough, but We're working to get more every day as hard as we possibly can, begging, pleading, doing everything in our power to get product in hand. So that's all we're trying to do, is just make sure that we pay attention to what's going on, react accordingly without freaking out. And ultimately, our goal is to deliver the best service to the customer at the best price that we can possibly sell that product out and still remain in business. We got families to feed, so we gotta make sure we make a little bit. So that's our goal, and hopefully we're going to see this stabilize. And I'm really hoping that, these price increases that we've referenced up to 50%, maybe even 75%. I'm really praying that doesn't happen. And at the end of the day, we're all fishermen. Like the guys that work at American Legacy, me, Adam, Jacob, Hans, Chad, Rob, like all of us, we are avid consumers. Like we talk about how there's not a lot of money in fishing, and then like go work at a fishing store and then find out there's a lot less because you just walk by something and convince yourself you need it. So we don't want this. We don't want this to have huge price increases. We don't want to pay more, and we hope that it's not going to be dramatic, but can tell you with certainty, these are happening. They're happening relatively soon. If you want to stock up now, go for it. Certainly you're not going to find it cheaper, but that's all we're trying to do, is just navigate this with everybody else and keep a calm head on our shoulders. And hopefully everything will turn out okay. And we'll talk again in a year, and it'll have nothing to do with tariffs, and we can just talk about big bass and them blowing up on frogs. Or
get me to summer. Give me to summer and lily pads, and take me away from thinking about paying twice as much for my gear and just go out and let me catch topwater fish. Amen. I do think, though, if there's one thing I took away from this conversation and one quote that is going to be burned in the back of my head for the next, I don't know, I'm going to sit here and edit this for another hour or two, like once we get done. You're going to
need to, because I rambled so freaking much.
No, this boils down to, there was a single quote that you said like halfway through, and I wrote it down because I was like, that's it. That's how I feel right now. You are not going to buy it cheaper than you can right now. That is across the board on almost everything. I think that is the sentiment right now. Could things change? Could they not be as bad as we think? Yes, they could. But with certainty, we can basically say from everybody we've talked about, right now is as good as it is going to be probably ever again, because prices never go down. They always go up, and we're seeing the storm coming on the horizon here pretty soon. Right now we're going to look back on this in 6 months, a year, 2 years, and be like, remember when we could get that for that price? Like, we're living it right now, and we only have, I don't know, a couple weeks or months left. So I appreciate you hopping on, Brian, and kind of giving us some insight on this. I know it's kind of like a bummer to talk about, but I think as consumers and listeners of the show, I think people deserve to know what's actually happening behind the scenes. It's Tackle Talk. We're obviously going to talk about everything tackle, and I think this is a really important thing that a lot of people are just kind of glossing over right now that I think people should know about. So Brian, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me, and we'll figure this all out together, and we'll get it worked out one way or another. Can I shout out our YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Go for it.
American Legacy Fishing. I'm dying for us to get to 3,000 subscribers. Like, my mom keeps asking me every day, did you get to 3,000 subscribers? And I keep telling her no. And you could just hear through the phone. Like, I can almost
disappointed.
You're such a disappointment. You're such a disappointment. And so I just want to get to 3,000.
Well, how close are you right now? It's April 17th. What are you guys at right now?
We're 2,900 and some change.
Okay. Let's do that. If you're listening to this, again, the man came on and spilled his heart about everything that you guys aren't supposed to know that's going on behind the scenes right now in the fishing world to try and help you save some money and put you in a better spot. Go over and subscribe to the American Legacy Fishing YouTube channel. That is the only thing we are asking from this episode. So, yes, let's get him to 3,000. Make his mom proud.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, everybody, there you have it. Straight from the source, from Brian, and from the people that both Brian and I personally talked to over the past few weeks to research this. This is happening. The price increases are coming, and there's nothing we can do about it. And they're not small price increases. We're talking about actual 20, 30, 40% price increases on a lot of the everyday products that we use as bass anglers. And it's important to remember that for the most part, this is not really within the control of the retailer. They're getting hit with the same price increase for the most part that you are, maybe even a little bit more if they try to absorb some of the blow for you. So it doesn't make sense really to be mad at Tackle Warehouse or Walmart or ALF or Bass Pro, because that's not going to do you any good. It's not coming from them. And most of the brands aren't really to blame either. If they're being honest about what they're doing and they're just passing along the increased cost of production and receiving those products from other countries, then again, that's also sort of out of their control if that's their business model of importing products. And even if you say, well, you know what, you should make them in the United States. First off, that does not happen overnight. Your whole business has been run one way for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You can't just snap your fingers and all of a sudden bring production, over here. And even if they did, you'd probably be looking at a price increase regardless, because again, it's way more expensive to produce in the United States than it is overseas most of the time. So it's really a lose-lose situation a lot of times for them as well. So it's not really within a lot of the people in the fishing industry's control, again, unless they're being a little sleazy about it. We talked about that in the episode too. Hopefully not very many people are doing that. But again, I'm not saying that you don't have the right to be upset, because of course you do, but hopefully this helps you better understand who is and isn't in control of those price increases that you're about to see. And again, I hope this helps you make smart decisions about if, when, and where you're going to buy your tackle. So I think Brian and I both shared the same philosophy on this one after all the research we did. If you need to purchase something or restock anything, I personally would do it now. And if you don't, that's totally your choice. I understand. I respect it. It's not in everybody's budget. Everybody's situation is different. But if you see prices go up here soon, don't say that we here at Tackle Talk didn't try and warn you. All right, everybody, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. As always, you can find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. Our shop is open over there where you can purchase a mug, a shirt, a value bundle, whatever you want. We really appreciate you all for all that support. If you can, go over and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. We appreciate that as well. Go find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.